Hey there, welcome to saas.unbound podcast. I'm your host, I'm Nadeina, head of growth at SaaS Group, Serial Acquire buying wonderful SaaS businesses to take them to the next level. And here I chat with inspiring founders and experts to get an inside scoop on how they made their business success. So today with me is Pierre, founder of Claap, an AI meeting automation platform for sales. Welcome.
Hi, everyone.
It's great to see you here. I'm going to tell you a bit of a story. When I started this podcast almost 2 years ago, there were three people on my list that I thought I'm never getting them on a podcast. Like it's just too good to be true. It was Christoph from Slide, Guillaume Mabesh from Lemlist, and it was you.
Okay, good to meet
And now
you.
I got all of them. I don't know why. I don't know why. Like I was like, no, it's just like it's impossible to get you on a pod. And there we are.
Okay,
So thanks for
that's
being
good.
here.
And I'm curious, what was the reason? Because 2 years ago, we were getting started with Clap, I guess, at this
Good
time.
question.
What was the reason behind?
I think it was just because, you were already building your brand on LinkedIn. You were getting a lot of attention on social media. And I was like, yeah, he's going to say no. Like, I'm just starting.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
because
we're finally
at that
here.
time I was saying yes to all podcasts, because I
Mhm.
received advice saying that basically if you make a podcast and even if you have 10 people, is basically much more productive compared to one even a one-one conversation. So it was the shot. So I think I said yes to all podcast I was invited to. And I
Okay.
think it's something I learned from Christoph from Slide, or someone else. But I think it's a good advice. Like if you're a founder and you are invited to a podcast, say yes, even if the audience is 10 or 20 people.
Yeah. See, I scared myself. So, all right. Well, glad you're here. Let's maybe start with your background because you're an investor. You came to B2B from B2C, and it's a fascinating story.
Yeah. So I'm Pierre. I'm French. The way I like to define myself is that I'm a marketing guy, and I love product marketing. I come from a B2C background and I moved to the B2B space almost 9 years ago, something like this. But it's true, when I started and today I'm building Clap. When I started my career, I basically started in the B2C world and something really, really different from the tech industry, which was the beauty industry. Basically, I worked at L'Oreal for almost 4 years. And my job was to invent and design the product that you would see in store in 2 years, 3 years, and so on. So from the conception to the communication part, the first phase was basically you are in charge of a range. So for example, you worked for a couple of years for an anti-aging product for women. So my job was to take care of this range, to say, okay, we need this type of product. So let's write a concept about it. What's the story behind and so on? What is the formula going to look like? What's the packaging going to look like? And so on. Then the moment you have validated the need to basically launch this product, you have the second phase, which is more about communication and advertising. What is a TV campaign going to look like? Same for print, digital, and so on. So really different from the tech world. And I think the reason I wanted to do that is that I love to build new stuff and to tell stories and to invent stories. But since I'm a kid, and I think it was really amazing when you're 22 to be able to tell stories, not for you, but that are going to be broadcast to basically everyone in the world, from women in China, Korea, the US, Europe, and so on. So I think I really loved this idea. And I think at some point I decided to shift, because when you work in the beauty industry, it's not super innovative in terms of product. It's innovative in terms of adapting to brands, to trends, but not in terms of pure technology. Like you write new stories, but behind I was yeah, I'm writing new stories, but I know that deep down it's kind of the same technology. So I was a bit frustrated about this. I was like, yeah, it's as if you work in tech and you work and the latest technology is your Nokia 36010, but you are just telling a new story or new colors and so on. So yeah, there's something wrong with that. So I decided to basically join It was in 2016, a company called 360 Learning. So at that time, it was quite small. It was like maybe 30 people, something like this. And then the company grew a lot. Like right now, it must be, I don't know, like 400, 500 people, something like this. And I joined as a growth marketer. And it's very funny because when I joined like from B2C to B2B, for example, I had no idea what a lead was or what a MQL was. I was like, yeah, what's like all this jargon and wording? It's really weird. And at the same time, I love the fact that it was really structured in the way of managing like your marketing funnel and pipeline and so on. And since you know your buyers much better, for example, if you work in B2C, like the spectrum can be really large. Like you know the ICP in a way, but you don't, and you can go on stores and so on, but you don't really know the buyers. Like you don't speak with them and so on. And I really love the fact that you could really basically like better understand like the whole like buying journey in B2B. And at the same time, I was like, yeah, but B2B can be like quite boring, like in the sense that, yeah, since it's B2B, people feel they need to speak with business with like some boring like corporate stuff. And I think that's a bit like the stuff that struck me when I joined the B2B world. And then basically I had the opportunity to stay like almost 5 years at 360 Learning to really grow with the company from growth to leading the demand generation team and then like being a VP of marketing and also moving to the US to start the US office. So I learned like a lot of stuff along the way. I really loved this company, but I knew that I was also doing that because I wanted to build my own company. At some point in 2020, that's the moment I spoke with Robin. Robin, my co-founder now, is also one of my best friends for like 16 years. And he had like a bit the same path, like as a VP product at Augury. And we're like, yeah, that's the right moment to get started. At the time, the Claap that you might know now was completely different. And the story of how we came with the idea of Claap is kind of like serendipity in a way, meaning that when we started, the
Okay.
initial concept was more asynchronous meeting. Like it was COVID, we were like basically like spending our days in back-to-back meetings. Also, I was super familiar with asynchronous communication because when I joined 360 Learning, we had like strong no meeting policies and so on. So I was really passionate about the topic of asynchronous communication. So when we started Claap, yeah, the product was asynchronous meeting. And basically what we wanted to invent was a new system to align and facilitate decision making in companies. So quite a broad concept. And the problem was, okay, our assumption was if you have too many meanings because there is a friction of in the way you align and make decision when you with asynchronous written communication, and you need something like in between that mix like video plus super contextual feedback. So the product we launched was basically the ability to send like short videos and to help people collect feedback on those videos to make decisions and so on. It was something to summarize a more collaborative Loom in like two sentences.
That was my thought exactly. I'm like, that sounds like Loom.
Yeah, but at the time, like the pitch of Loom was really, really different. And also the pain was Loom was really designed for single users and not really for growing like teams and companies and so on in the way you collect feedback, but also in the workspace organization. So we had like build a Loom mixed with like a Notion in a way, but we decided to pivot and it took us a bit of time to really right now we are like selling something like different. Along the way we realized that this market was much more complex than what we expected, so people like move from like being remote to going back to the office. At the same time it was like the crisis in the tech world, so this tool was more considered as a nice to have in a way because it's quite hard to explain like the real business problem that you solve. So it was also hard to monetize. And at the same time, we realized that a lot of people were using our product to actually do something really unexpected, which was to record their meetings using the Chrome extension and to use the comment to also like share feedback and coach their team and so on. and they wanted to have a solution that was super, super easy to use compared to something that worked like Gong, for example, but that was really hard to implement and to maintain and so on. And so we had like about maybe 20% of all videos being like meeting recordings, which was like not 1 or 2%. And at the same time, people using Clap this way were much more likely to pay for the solution. So in the end, we decided to pivot to really focus on the sales teams and to basically become a solution to capture like all sales conversations and to basically ensure that first, like salespeople are productive while making sure they follow the sales process in terms of updating their CRM, sending follow-up email, capturing the right information, and so on. And two, we help also managers control that the sales playbook is applied and is also working well for their team.
That's awesome. So you really got pulled into this by your customers. But I have a very important question before we go any further. What are the L'Oreal products that you were working on?
Yeah,
What can we buy that is yours?
so we have a few brands. I worked a bit for Kerastase. And then for the anti-aging, I was at Biotherm. At Biotherm, I was in charge of a range called Blue Therapy. It's anti-aging. And I think the product I loved the most was a product called Cream in Oil. And we actually got an award from the Marie Claire Award for this one
Okay.
because the texture was amazing. Like the texture and the fragrance.
Oh, right. Anti-aging. I mean, I still got a couple of years to get there, but I'll try it. Okay. Back to normal. But yeah, great story. So I think I really loved how you said, moving from B2C to B2B was a bit like, you're moving into a more structured kind of setup. And yes, you learn a lot more about who you're selling to because, like, it's just, I feel like it's just a bit of a smaller scope, right? Especially if you're working with big customers. But, I feel like B2B is, I don't know, for the lack of a better word, is a bit of a scam that marketers created for themselves to like say, oh, let's just create this new type of marketing that is, well, the same, but we'll tell everybody it's different. Because I feel like, in B2C, yes, you're talking to people, right? And you're selling to real consumers. And in B2B, we tend to kind of fall into this trap of like, oh, we're selling to Google, and Google seems like this, monster under your bed that, you have to tame. So yeah, just kind of having gone through that journey, what's your perception of like how different actually marketing to end user is to marketing to Google?
I think it's the main thing that might be different is that for a consumer, you are alone in your decision-making process. So you can really target emotions. And at the same time, even if you work on anti-aging, you also need to balance emotion with rationality because you want to be able to explain the reason why you this product afterwards. And you also want to buy like some performance. And it was funny when we were like doing qualitative tests because you test like claims, like performance claims and so on. And even though women are not like gullible in the way that, yeah, they know it's a marketing claim, at the same time, they're going to compare product and they're going to still buy the one with the strongest performance marketing claim. So you need in B2C, the emotional side is really, really important, but you also need to provide performance. I think in B2B is that you are still going to buy a lot with emotions and so on, and not everything is like rational. But since the decision making process is probably going to involve, I don't like other people in the room, you need also to provide a way for your champion, for example, to explain why your product is the better and so on. So you need to take care of like more people in the room, I would say. And for me, that's really like the biggest difference is that it's not a one person decision. And in B2C is more a one person decision.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. So, what do you think, from that point of view, what should maybe marketers or founders who don't have the marketing team should take from B2C marketing into B2B?
I think for me, it depends your goal on in terms of like what's your goal in terms of marketing and what's your typical like I would say like sales funnel. Because in some cases the role of marketing can be to support sales and is more to provide the content to help the sales team improve their conversion rate. If you are more inbound led, it can be more about awareness and so on. I think the most important stuff would be to not be afraid to be different, and it's good if people are a bit shocked by what you do. Like it's basically like good marketing is not for everyone. Need to have your. It's better to have like 10% that absolutely love your communication, and maybe a lot of haters. It's better than a basic like 100% of people that don't care.
Yeah.
And I think if you launch something, for example, we made some funny videos like a year ago. We did the Loom's funeral when they've been bought by Atlassian, and you can be a bit provocative, but you don't need to be afraid of being provocative in a way. Like, and honestly, like if you are small, the risk is not very high.
Yeah, that's true. It's like I'm thinking about this now very famous Jaguar campaign that everyone is just so furious about. Like, oh, it's the shitty rebranding and it looks absolutely horrible. And I'm looking at it and I think, oh my God, that's like the best campaign in the world because people are so pissed, but everyone is talking about it. Like, literally everyone. You hate it, but we've spent the last, I don't know, week talking solely about Jaguar. So it must be
Yeah,
working.
exactly, exactly. And that's a good ROI in terms of like a word of mouth.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So going into your first venture, your first B2B, what were kind of the first time founder traps or mistakes that you fell for, and how did you get out?
I think the biggest mistake we made was that it took us a lot of time to pivot from the initial idea to the second one. And it's probably like because when we launched Clap, we raised quite a lot. And even before we had the product and we had like a storytelling that resonated a lot. And so I think we were like a bit trapped with like this vision. And I think like pivoting at the time for me meant a bit failure. And I think I was really afraid to pivot. So it took us like a lot of time. And we tried at some point, we tried to do both at the same time and to invent like a new positioning, completely different, etc. So for example, we had asynchronous meeting. Then we started like testing all-in-one video workspace, mixing meeting recording plus screen recording, but it was really hard to sell because it's hard to and tell people what's the biggest pain that you solve basically. And if you have like pain, you prefer to buy a solution that is going to do that versus a Swiss knife. But the moment we decided to pivot, our numbers really changed from one day to another. It took us a lot of time to do it and embrace it. And no, we don't regret, but the biggest mistake was to be afraid of pivoting.
Right, to fall in love with your product. But why did you decide to raise money in the first place? Like, was it because, 2020 and everyone was doing it and it was kind of just there? Or did you have some other reasons to do it?
I think it's a good question. I think when we raised, we were not sure about raising or going bootstrap. So we were like three, but we basically decided to announce the idea on LinkedIn to push the homepage, having beta testers and so on. And at the same time, we had like a lot of like inbound requests like from VCs. We wanted to raise, but more like maybe like 300, like 500K to get started and maybe hiring some developers and go a bit faster. But the plan was not necessarily like to raise a lot. And we are not very familiar with basically what fundraising meant. But I think we did it in a way with the storytelling was the right one at the right time. Also, we had a lot of strong business angels as backup. So we started creating a lot of momentum in our first fundraising. And yeah, we got 15 term sheets in maybe 3 weeks. So we decided, okay, let's go and let's raise. And yeah, in the end, we raised 3 million in pre-seed. And I think it was good in the sense that we wanted to build something that was really, really product led. And so we need to have a lot of software engineers, and we spend a lot of time refining the product and so on. And also, I think it gives you time to test your product market fit. So yeah, I think in the end, it's honestly, it's quite comfortable. Like it goes with a lot of pressure, but at the same time, to build a really, really cool product, it's quite an advantage to
Yeah.
raise pre-seed. Afterwards, it becomes questions, but at least for pre-seed,
Yeah.
it was a good idea.
Makes sense. I mean, it adds optionality, right? You can go in different directions, you
Exactly.
can try many things and obviously go
Exactly.
a little bit faster. Yeah. So I want to come back a little bit to marketing. And because, obviously I went around, looked at what you're doing, and, Clap is very recognizable. It's very, you've got great videos and it's always fun. And like you said, you shouldn't be afraid to be bold and to be different. And I wanted to ask you, like, how you ended up with this. And, whoever's listening, if you don't know what Clap is doing online on social media, like, go and check. It's really, really a fun thing to watch. So, yeah, I wanted to ask how you ended up with it and how you came to like being, bold and kind of selling in a way you would sell a consumer product.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it was a like it's really something I loved doing for years and years. Even at L'Oréal, I was really enjoying pushing bold stuff. My favorite brand is Nike, and I love the brands that are very different in a way and quite bold in terms of communication, but also visually and so on. So, for example, in terms of branding, I had a Pinterest file I was keeping for years and years with inspiration of visual and so on. So it's really something I love, like this part. And about the video thing, I think it was more about the advertising part a bit. Like at L'Oréal, this is the part I love the most, I think. Writing a TV advertising because it's more about you have your product concept, but how you elevate your product concept with a really different angle that is going to make people talk about it. So I think we started making videos. Even the first year we launched Clap, we had some funny videos inspired by some Instagrammer with like some mix of it's hard to explain like this, but with like people leaving their Zoom background, it was not a real one. Really hard to explain, but it worked very well. And then the videos that we are doing now with like this character we created with Max. Max is basically like the guy doing all the videos, like as an actor to edit them, basically like everything. It was we wanted to do a video, I remember, for a product hunt launch. And the concept was at the time, the battle was between like all the people that wanted to go back to the office and people that were for the remote world and so on. And I was like, all the time people were asking me questions about it. And I was a bit fed up about it. So I was like, make claps, not war. It was kind of the initial concept. So we made a video about it, and I realized that Max in our team was actually an amazing actor. And I was like, hey, Max, you didn't tell me. And then afterwards, actually, like I've been acting for 20 years. My parents are actors and so on. So after this, I told him, you are going to do it more and more. And basically, that's how we started really investing a lot in terms of video creation. Afterwards, we wanted to have something to facilitate the creation process, which is about picturing a character. So that's how we came up with the idea of picturing Ken Bleacher. And Ken Bleacher was supposed to be a guy explaining like product features and so on. But at the same time, we wanted to do it in a not boring way. So we had picture like like this math teacher at school that is basically explaining stuff with like your chair, like the chair like this, and that's how we came up with like this character. And then it was like much easier to basically like invent scripts and stories around this character. The way we proceed like for now is with like one video per video. So it's more like we have an idea and it's like the script and so on. It's good, but at the same time, it can be quite long in terms of process. So we are
Hmm.
like not that good on social media to produce a lot of content. So we're like trying to change a bit that to create like more repetition and be more organized in the way we basically produce content. But that's a bit like
Yeah.
the whole process.
Yeah, that was my question because, like, it's amazing, you've got great quality content, all those videos. Like, I love the scripts. I love that there is like a bit of a story behind it all the time. But like just doing podcasts and doing the shorts and everything, I realize how much time you guys must be spending. So, on average, like, how long does it take, from script to publishing?
It depends. In some cases, it can be really, really fast. For example, for the most successful one we had, which was Loom's funeral, it took us 2 days because Loom was bought by Atlassian. And we realized that a lot of people were writing to us saying, okay, it's a good news for us because they are going to kill Loom. And so on Monday, we sat down with Max and said, yeah, we are going to do a Loom's funeral. He shot the video the day after, and then he did it on Wednesday, and I think it was live on Thursday. So this one was quite short. Maybe it was 1 day and a half, something like this. And in some cases, it can be a bit longer, but it's more about the ideation process that can take a bit of time. But in general, the way Max is going to work is that the moment we have the script, then he's going to shoot. He has everything at home, like the green screen, and then he's going to edit the video. But depending on the complexity, it can take maybe a couple of days to maybe 10 days or something like this.
Okay.
But I
Yeah,
would
that
say
makes
the
sense.
longest, the ideation process, and also the edition part. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Do you guys use any AI tools to help you with content creation, with ideation of the concepts?
For the concept, in some cases, we use ChatGPT. For example, some lines from Loom's funeral, some jokes, they come from ChatGPT. And I remember we assigned the role, which was Alan from The Hangover. But in general, not that much. We use for some backgrounds and images. Like we use like a photo room or Canva typically to help with like the more like the since we have a big green screen, we need to add like some backgrounds. But as far as I know, not that much.
Okay. All right. That's pretty cool. Okay. Then, since we already kind of also touched the AI a little bit, you're working with sales teams, and I just saw that you had this webinar about AI changing the sales process. So, kind of putting together what you're doing with Claap and what is going on in terms of AI changing sales. How are you guys addressing it as well? Is there any way you're also kind of learning to work with, AI SDRs?
So we tried AI SDR actually, but it didn't work that well in our case because the result was not. Maybe it's because of like on our side the implementation was not done well. I don't know. I think it will work in the future in some cases. The way we address it for Clap is, I think, more a way to augment like different personas within the sales team, meaning that you have like one side which is more like sales reps, the second one which is more like sales coach and managers, and the last one is more like revenue operations and analysts. If you take the first one, basically what we do is that we try to really, so we use AI to automate as many admin tasks as a sales rep need to do at the moment. So like CM enrichment, sending like follow-up emails, like writing meeting notes, getting some help to prepare like your demo, your sales proposal, like basically like everything. So it's more a way to augment salespeople on the and because at the moment, if you take the day-to-day job of a sales rep, you have a lot of time just for admin task, but at the same time, they need to do those admin tasks to follow the sales process and sales playbook. So the idea is really to solve this. For managers, is more about, yeah, you want to make sure you want to understand why your team are winning or losing deals, and you want to get insights about it, but at the same time, you don't have time to watch all the calls. It's basically just too much time. So it's also how we can basically automate the whole process through AI. So typically, if they follow the right playbook, like some recommendations, like some deal coaching recommendation, how to close a specific deal, and so on. And then the last part, it's more like for analyst and rev ops. But since we capture a lot of data from for all the calls, it's more how we build a system to structure this data so you can really use it for deeper analysis about I don't know, like objections, competition, etc. And the point is also how you can do it directly in Claap, but or you can also like push this data to I don't know, like your BI system, your CRM, your Notion, whatever. So the point is also to provide, and I think it's because our background is really product led, and we are big fan of Notion and this kind of tool. So the way is also to make sure that the product is super easy to use, but offer a lot of flexibility at the same time in terms of how you can make sure it's completely adapted to your own internal use case.
That's great. And you already mentioned that you wanted Clap to be product led, and now you're saying it again. But in my head, with this kind of tools, when you work with like sales departments, for example, it really makes sense for a bit of a bigger company, a bit of a bigger client, where this aha moment maybe is a little more down the line. So how do you kind of balance this, the fact that you're product led and the fact that you're going after bigger clients?
So I think yeah, we want it to be product led. We are still product led, but it doesn't mean that we don't do sales led. For example, we spend a lot of time in the typical sales process because I think the moment you have a buying, like you are like a VP sales, you know, you have a budget to buy this type of solution. The buying process is going to be quite similar with the discovery phase, the demo, and so on. So you need to do sales on top of being product led. I think the benefit of being product led is that you have a lot of inbound leads generated through it. You have a lot of like also like salespeople paying directly for the solution. So it's lower the risk of non-adoption of the solution. And I think it's also something that you can really explain is that if you buy this solution, you are like 100% sure that the sales team is going to fully adopt it. While many solutions on the market have been designed for managers, but the risk is that you pay a lot and after a year you realize that the sales team is not using it. So it's basically also an argument in the sales process. And I think to complete your point, I think something I learned is that the way to sell is completely different from one to another, meaning that when you're product led, you start using the feature and you make your buying decision based on the usage that you have, which is good and bad at the same time. But when you buy with a sales-led process, you are going to focus a lot on the pains of the prospect and basically like the impact that you can give them if you solve those pains. And basically like the first half of the process, you don't speak at all about your product. Then you just show the right feature that are going to solve the pain they told you they have.
Right. Yeah, that makes complete sense. I mean, when it's product led, you're on your own, right? You have to figure it out. And when you're sales led, then, you have this a bit of a unfair advantage of just like showing, okay, well, this is exactly where you're going to have the aha. So yeah,
Yeah.
fascinating. Okay, well then, I have just a couple more questions, which are the usuals here. So far, great journey, cool what you're doing, and it seems like you're like really figured out a more of a sustainable way to grow and work with your investment. What has been the biggest win and the biggest failure?
I think the biggest win was the we decided to pivot. No, it was really a game changer in terms of like growth. And biggest failure, I think it took us too much time to do it, honestly.
Okay. Yeah, great. And yeah, a hack, something that works can be for you personally, can be for the business.
No, I think since we discussed about it just before, I think is so as a founder, it's basically like you work a lot and you don't have like tons of vacation. But I decided to move to Lisbon like 2 years ago, and just being able to be at the beach every weekend and feeling like being in vacation, it's the greatest hack ever as a founder to make sure that you are like resilient throughout like the building journey.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, for the longest time, I've been traveling and I've been moving around the world for, good weather, being at the beach. And, my mom would always say, like, this is so stupid. Like, people don't move for the weather or for the climate. And, last year she would spend like almost the entire fall in the south and at the beach, and she came back and she was like, okay, 13 years, I'm taking it all back because you were right. It sucks.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah.
I couldn't move away from the scene.
Yeah, it's great. No, work life balance is definitely underrated. So, yeah, thank you so much for sharing the story. Like I said, it's really fascinating to see what you're doing, how you're doing it. There is a lot of inspiration for me personally and, as a marketer as well. So, yeah, excited what you're going to do next.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you for your time and take care.